Your kind doesn't belong here. The words slice through the marble lobby of Emerald Bay Resort like a blade. Richard Steinberg, the general manager, stands behind his mahogany desk with arms crossed, staring down at James Crawford and his family. The black man in the polo shirt and chinos holds his daughter's hand while his wife clutches their son closer. There must be some mistake, Richard continues, his voice dripping with false concern. This reservation doesn't seem legitimate. James's 12-year-old son, Michael, whispers, "Dad, why is he talking to us like that?" The presidential suite confirmation sits on the counter, $8,000 per night, 5 nights, paid in full. But Richard's eyes see only what he wants to see. A black family that doesn't belong in his world of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. 9-year-old Sophia starts to cry. Richard doesn't know he's just insulted the man who could buy his entire world. What would you do if your family was humiliated because of your race? Tell me where you're watching from. 2 hours earlier, the Crawford family's black Tesla Model S glides through the palm-lined entrance of Emerald Bay Resort. James parks near the valet station, stepping out to help his wife Lisa and their 2 children. No entourage follows, no security detail, just a family of 4 arriving for their 15th wedding anniversary celebration. The resort gleams in the California afternoon sun, white stone facades, infinity pools cascading toward the Pacific, and perfectly manicured gardens that scream luxury. James chose this place specifically for Lisa, who deserves nothing but the best after the grueling year they've both endured building their lives. Richard Steinberg watches from his office window overlooking the entrance. 20 years managing high-end resorts has taught him to categorize guests within seconds. The Tesla is nice, but not Bentley nice. The family's clothing is neat but off the rack. No designer luggage, no obvious jewelry. His mental calculator runs through the numbers. This doesn't add up. He descends to the lobby as the Crawfords approach the reception desk. Maria, the young Latina receptionist, greets them with genuine warmth. "Welcome to Emerald Bay. You must be the Crawford family." "That's right," James says, his voice calm and measured. "Presidential suite for 5 nights?" Richard materializes beside Maria like a storm cloud. "I'll handle this, Maria." His tone suggests she's made an error. He examines their confirmation with theatrical skepticism, tilting the paper toward the light as if checking for watermarks. I'll need to see additional identification." Lisa's eyebrows raise. "Additional?" "Standard procedure for certain reservations." The word certain hangs in the air like poison gas. Other guests in the lobby begin to notice the delay. A well-dressed white couple walks directly to the adjacent counter and receives their keys within 90 seconds. "There seems to be an issue with our system," Richard announces, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "We'll need to verify this reservation thoroughly." James notices everything. The double-checking, the theatrical delays, the way Richard's eyes never quite meet his. He's been here before. Different hotels, same script, same shame. But this time feels different. This time his children are watching. Michael tugs at his father's sleeve. "Dad, is everything okay?" 20 minutes pass. Other families come and go. The Crawfords remain standing, their luggage growing heavier by the minute. As James hands over his driver's license for the 3rd time, Richard's eyes narrow with satisfaction. Richard studies James's identification like a detective examining evidence at a crime scene. The license is valid. The address is affluent Brooklyn, but something in Richard's gut tells him this doesn't belong. 20 years of hospitality management has given him what he calls situational awareness, the ability to spot guests who don't fit the Emerald Bay standard. "Mr. Crawford," Richard says, emphasizing each syllable, "I'm going to need to verify the source of payment for this reservation." Lisa steps forward, her patience evaporating. "Excuse me? Ma'am, we have strict policies about fraudulent bookings. I'm sure you understand." The accusation hits the lobby like a slap. Conversations stop. Phones come out. A teenage guest starts recording. James places a protective hand on Lisa's shoulder. Sir, we've provided everything you've requested. Our reservation is confirmed and paid. What exactly is the problem? Richard's smile is arctic. The problem, Mr. Crawford, is that we maintain certain standards here. Standards that protect all our guests. What does that mean? Lisa demands. It means that perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of our sister properties. The Hampton Inn down the highway has excellent... No. James's voice cuts through Richard's suggestion like steel. We're staying here, in the suite we reserved and paid for. The word no seems to offend Richard personally. His face reddens slightly, the first crack in his professional veneer. Mr. Crawford, I don't think you understand the caliber of establishment this is. Michael looks up at his father with confusion. Dad, why doesn't he want us here? The innocent question lands like a bomb. Richard's discomfort becomes visible. Lisa's hands clench into fists. James feels the familiar weight of having to explain racism to his children again. Sometimes, son, people make assumptions about others based on how they look rather than who they are. Richard straightens, sensing an opportunity to regain control. This has nothing to do with appearance. This is about maintaining the exclusive atmosphere our clientele expects. Your clientele, James repeats slowly. Exactly. People who understand this environment. The euphemisms pile up like layers of paint over rot. James makes a decision that will change everything. I'd like to speak with your supervisor. Richard's laugh is sharp and dismissive. Mr. Crawford, I am the supervisor. But Richard doesn't know he's about to make the biggest mistake of his career. Richard decides to end this charade once and for all. 20 years of protecting Emerald Bay's reputation has taught him that sometimes you must be firm with people who don't understand their place. Mr. Crawford, Richard announces, his voice carrying across the marble lobby, I'm going to need to inspect your luggage. The request stops all conversation in the vicinity. A well-dressed elderly woman clutches her pearls. A businessman lowers his newspaper. The teenage girl with the phone moves closer, still recording. Our luggage? Lisa's voice rises in disbelief. Security protocol. We need to ensure compatibility with our environment. James remains still as stone, but his children shrink behind him. Sophia starts crying quietly. Michael's face burns with confusion and shame he doesn't understand. Richard opens their rolling suitcase in full view of the lobby. He examines Lisa's dresses with theatrical scrutiny, holds up James's work shirts like evidence in a trial. These items seem inconsistent with our dress code. Dad, Michael whispers, why is he going through our clothes? Other guests begin to murmur. A young white couple exchanges uncomfortable glances. An older black gentleman in an expensive suit shakes his head and walks away in disgust. Richard finds James's laptop bag. What's your profession, Mr. Crawford? I work in hospitality. Hospitality? Richard's eyebrows arch. What kind of hospitality? Management. Richard's smile turns predatory. Management. I see. And who employs you in this management position? The questions feel like interrogation. James realizes Richard is performing for an audience, using his family as props in some twisted theater of humiliation. Is this really necessary in front of my children? James asks quietly. Mr. Crawford, perhaps this conversation would be more productive if you were honest about your circumstances. This reservation is clearly beyond your means. The accusation hangs in the air like smoke. Lisa steps forward, trembling with rage. How dare you assume anything about our means? Richard's mask finally slips completely. Ma'am, I've been in this business long enough to know when someone is aspirational. Maybe you should try somewhere more suited to your background. The word background echoes through the lobby. Several guests gasp audibly. The teenage recorder moves even closer. Sophia's crying becomes audible. Michael looks at his parents with eyes full of questions no child should have to ask. James kneels down to his children's level. "Hey," he says softly, "go wait in the car with Mom. I need to handle some business." Lisa hesitates. "James, trust me." His voice carries a certainty that stops her protests. As his family walks toward the exit, James turns back to Richard. For the first time since arriving, he smiles. "Thank you for clarifying your position, Mr. Steinberg. This has been very educational." Richard feels a strange chill, though he can't explain why. As James heads toward the parking lot, he pulls out his phone for a call that will change everything. James sits in the Tesla's driver's seat, watching his wife comfort their children in the back. Sophia has stopped crying, but her eyes are red and confused. Michael stares out the window, processing emotions he doesn't have words for yet. "Dad," Michael says finally, "are we bad people?" The question hits James like a physical blow. "No, son, we're not bad people. But sometimes good people have to deal with bad situations." Lisa reaches forward and squeezes James's shoulder. In 15 years of marriage, she's learned to recognize the look in his eyes. It's not anger. It's something colder, more methodical. "What are you thinking?" she asks. James doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he dials a number from memory. "Michael, it's James." The voice on the other end is crisp, professional. "James, how's the anniversary trip? I need you to initiate the Pacific Project. Full acquisition protocol." Silence. Michael Chen, James's chief acquisitions officer, has worked with him long enough to understand the code. Pacific Project means complete buyout. Full acquisition protocol means no negotiation, no mercy. Timeline? 48 hours. Understood. Target? Emerald Bay Resort, Malibu. I'll send details within the hour. James ends the call and immediately dials another number. "Linda? James Crawford. I need the full legal team mobilized for a federal discrimination case. Yes, federal. And Linda, I want this one to set a precedent." A third call goes to his head of research. "Sarah, I need a complete background check on Emerald Bay Resort. Ownership structure, financial health, employee records, any previous complaints. I want to know what Richard Steinberg had for breakfast yesterday." Lisa listens to each call with growing understanding. She's married to a man who doesn't just get mad, he gets systematic. "How long have you been planning this?" she asks. "Since the moment he said, 'You're kind.'" "But really? I've been planning this my whole life." James pulls up his phone's voice memo app and starts recording. "This is James Crawford, CEO of Crawford Hospitality Group. Today, October 15th, at approximately 3:30 p.m., my family and I were subjected to overt racial discrimination at Emerald Bay Resort in Malibu, California. The general manager, Richard Steinberg, engaged in the following behaviors." He recounts every detail with the precision of a lawyer and the memory of a man who's endured this before. Every word Richard spoke, every gesture, every witness. Lisa watches him work and feels a familiar surge of pride. This is why she fell in love with him. Not just his success, but his refusal to accept injustice. "What about the kids?" she asks. James looks at Michael and Sophia in the rearview mirror. "They're going to learn that when someone tries to make you small, you don't shrink, you grow." He starts the car and drives toward the Four Seasons down the coast, their backup accommodation while his team prepares to dismantle Richard Steinberg's world. Within 24 hours, James will know everything about Emerald Bay Resort, including who really owns it. Back at Emerald Bay, Richard Steinberg feels the satisfaction of a job well done. He returns to his office overlooking the lobby, pouring himself a scotch from the crystal decanter that came with his position. 20 years of maintaining standards has taught him that sometimes difficult decisions must be made. Maria, the receptionist, appears in his doorway. "Mr. Steinberg?" The other guests are asking questions about what happened. What kind of questions? They want to know if that's normal procedure. Richard sets down his glass. Maria, you've been here 6 months. Let me explain something about hospitality management. We have a responsibility to maintain the atmosphere our legitimate guests expect. Sometimes that means making hard choices. Maria shifts uncomfortably. But they had a confirmed reservation. They paid. Anyone can make a reservation online, Maria. Anyone can steal a credit card. Experience teaches you to recognize when something doesn't add up. But Maria remembers the Crawford family's children. The little girl was crying. The boys confused questions. That didn't feel like fraud prevention. It felt like something else entirely. In the lobby, guests whisper among themselves. The teenage girl who recorded the encounter has already posted the video to TikTok with the caption, "Racism at Luxury Resort." Within an hour, it has 30,000 views. Meanwhile, at the Four Seasons, James Crawford sits in a suite overlooking the Pacific while his laptop displays preliminary research on Emerald Bay Resort. The numbers tell a story of decline. Occupancy rates down 23% over 2 years, $12 million in outstanding debt, and a desperate search for buyers. His phone buzzes with updates from his team. Sarah, research. Found 17 discrimination complaints filed against Emerald Bay in the past 3 years. All settled quietly. Richard Steinberg named specifically in 11 of them. Linda, legal. Federal case is solid. Multiple witnesses, video evidence, pattern of behavior. This could be landmark. Michael, acquisitions. Current owners are Vancouver-based investment group. They're motivated sellers, desperate actually. Property is valued at $89 million, but they'll take $72 million for a quick close. James forwards the information to his CFO with a simple message. Prepare the offer. Lisa sits beside him, reading over his shoulder. $72 million? It's not about the money, James says quietly. It's about making sure this never happens to another family. He closes the laptop and looks out at the ocean. Tomorrow he returns to Emerald Bay. But he won't be coming as a guest. Richard has no idea that his problem guests are about to become his new bosses. 48 hours later, James Crawford returns to Emerald Bay Resort. This time, he's not alone. 3 black SUVs pull up to the valet station. James steps out of the first vehicle, followed by his legal team, financial advisors, and acquisition specialists, all wearing dark suits, all carrying briefcases. Richard watches from his office window, his coffee growing cold in his hands. Something about this convoy feels ominous, though he can't identify why. Maria, he calls to the reception desk. Call security. We might have a situation. But James doesn't approach the front desk. Instead, he walks directly to the resort's administrative offices, his team flanking him like a corporate army. I'm here to see the ownership representative, James announces to the assistant. Do you have an appointment? James's lawyer, Linda Sherman, steps forward. We're here regarding pending litigation against this property for federal civil rights violations. The owners will want to see us. The word litigation travels through the office like wildfire. Within minutes, Richard appears, his face flushed with confusion and growing panic. You, he says, pointing at James. What are you doing here? Business, James replies simply. Richard's mind races. How did the man he humiliated 2 days ago return with lawyers? You can't just waltz in here with threats. No threats, Linda interrupts, placing a folder on the reception counter. Just facts. Your property faces federal civil rights charges, potential criminal prosecution, and civil damages in the millions. The assistant calls the current owners in Vancouver. Within 20 minutes, Thomas Chen, no relation to James's Michael Chen, is on a video call from his office, looking haggard and desperate. Mr. Crawford, Thomas says through the screen, we had no knowledge of any discriminatory practices. Richard operates independently. I understand, James says calmly, which is why I'm here with a solution. Richard interjects frantically. Mr. Chen, this is just a misunderstanding. I was following standard security protocols. Richard, Thomas cuts him off. Please step outside. Left alone with the owners and lawyers, James makes his offer. $72 million, cash, 30-day close. You avoid the litigation nightmare, and I acquire a property that needs new management. Thomas stares at James through the screen. You're the buyer we've been hoping for? I'm the buyer you need. Meanwhile, in the lobby, staff members whisper among themselves. Maria recognizes James from 2 days ago. Other employees remember the incident with the family. Slowly, they begin to understand what's happening. Word spreads through the resort like electricity. The man Richard humiliated is buying the entire property. Tomorrow's meeting will reveal who really holds the power. The next morning, James Crawford returns to Emerald Bay one final time as a non-owner. His legal team has prepared the acquisition documents overnight. The wire transfer authorization sits in his briefcase, waiting for a signature. Richard intercepts him at the entrance, flanked by 2 security guards. You're not welcome here, Richard declares, his voice shaking with barely controlled desperation. I don't care who you think you are or what lawyers you've hired. This is my resort. James stops walking. For the first time since this began, he speaks directly to Richard as an equal. Your resort? I've managed this property for 20 years. I built its reputation. I protected its standards. Standards, James repeats. Is that what you call humiliating children? Behind Richard, staff members begin to gather. Maria, the housekeeping supervisor, the concierge, the restaurant manager. Word has spread that something momentous is happening. Thomas Chen's assistant arrives from the airport, carrying the ownership documents. She approaches James, ignoring Richard entirely. Mr. Crawford? Mr. Chen is ready to finalize the sale. Richard's face goes white. Sale? What sale? James accepts the documents and turns to address the gathered employees. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is James Crawford. As of this moment, I am the new owner of Emerald Bay Resort. The lobby falls silent except for the sound of Richard's sharp intake of breath. This is impossible, Richard whispers. James signs the papers with a Mont Blanc pen, each signature transferring another aspect of control. Property, operations, personnel decisions. Mr. Steinberg, James says, his voice carrying across the marble floor. You're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the property. Can you guess what's about to happen next? Drop your predictions below. Richard staggers backward as if physically struck. You can't do this. I have contracts. I have rights. You had rights, James corrects. You forfeited them when you decided my family didn't belong here. The security guards Richard summoned now await James's instructions. With a slight nod, James indicates they should remove the former general manager. As Richard is escorted toward the exit, he turns back one final time. This isn't over. James's response is quiet but carries to every corner of the lobby. Yes, it is. But James's transformation of Emerald Bay is just beginning. The gathered employees stare at James Crawford in stunned silence. The man they witnessed being humiliated 3 days ago now holds their employment contracts in his hands. But the biggest revelation is yet to come. I should properly introduce myself, James says, addressing the staff assembled in the lobby. I'm James Crawford, founder and CEO of Crawford Hospitality Group. Maria's eyes widened. Even though she knows that name, Crawford Hospitality Group owns 127 luxury properties across 23 countries. The company's revenue last year was $2.8 billion. You might be wondering how someone who was treated so poorly by your former manager could afford to purchase this resort, James continues. The truth is, I started with nothing. My grandfather was a janitor. My father was a construction worker. I put myself through business school working nights at a hotel front desk. The housekeeping supervisor, an older Latina woman named Carmen, nods with recognition. She understands the weight of working your way up from the bottom. 23 years ago, I bought my first failing hotel in Detroit. It was losing money, treating guests poorly, and the staff had given up hope. Sound familiar? A few nervous chuckles ripple through the crowd. I learned something important that day. Hospitality isn't about buildings or amenities. It's about making every guest feel valued, regardless of their background, appearance, or accent. That philosophy built my company. James walks toward the reception desk where Maria stands frozen. Maria, you were the only employee who treated my family with genuine respect. As of today, you're promoted to interim general manager while we conduct a search for permanent leadership. Maria's hand flies to her mouth. In 6 months, she's gone from entry-level receptionist to managing a $72 million property. But sir, she stammers, I don't have experience. You have something more valuable than experience. You have integrity. James turns back to the full staff. Everyone else will have the opportunity to reapply for their positions. We'll provide comprehensive training on inclusive hospitality. Those who embrace our values will have careers here for as long as they want them. His phone buzzes with a text from his wife. Kids want to know if you bought the mean man's hotel. Can I tell them yes? James smiles at the message before continuing his address. This resort will become the flagship for a new standard in luxury hospitality, one where excellence and inclusion aren't competing values but complementary ones. He pauses, letting his words sink in. Some of you witnessed what happened to my family here. You saw children humiliated because of their race. You watched their parents endure discrimination that should have no place in 2023. Some of you were uncomfortable. Some of you wanted to intervene but were afraid. Carmen raises her hand tentatively. Mr. Crawford, I wanted to say something, but I was scared of losing my job. Carmen, your honesty is exactly why you'll keep your job. Fear of speaking up against injustice is how discrimination survives. James opens his briefcase and pulls out a thick folder. Richard Steinberg's pattern of discrimination wasn't limited to my family. We've identified 17 similar incidents over the past 3 years. 17 families who were made to feel unwelcome because of their race, religion, or accent. That ends today. The maintenance supervisor, a young black man named Kevin, steps forward. Mr. Crawford, I've worked here for 2 years. I've seen things I reported to HR that never got addressed. Kevin, we're implementing an anonymous reporting system and a zero-tolerance policy. Discrimination isn't just a fireable offense. It's a career-ending one. James looks around the lobby that witnessed his family's humiliation. In his mind, he can already see the changes. Diverse staff at every level, training programs that emphasize respect, partnerships with local minority-owned businesses. This transformation will take time, but it starts today. Emerald Bay will become a place where families like mine can create beautiful memories without fear of prejudice. As if summoned by his words, Lisa, Michael, and Sophia enter through the front doors. The staff recognizes them immediately. The family that was turned away, now returning as the new owners. Michael, the 12-year-old who asked why the manager didn't like them, looks around the lobby with new understanding. Dad, he says, does this mean we can stay here now? James kneels to his son's level. This means every family can stay here now. The legal and corporate consequences for Richard are just beginning. Richard Steinberg sits in his car outside Emerald Bay Resort, watching through the gates as his 20-year career dissolves. His phone rings constantly. Reporters, former colleagues, his wife demanding explanations. The video of the Crawford family's humiliation has gone viral, reaching 2.3 million views across all platforms. His termination letter, delivered by Crawford's legal team, is comprehensive and damning. Terminated for cause due to discriminatory practices, violation of federal civil rights laws, and conduct detrimental to company reputation. No severance. No references. Inside the resort, James meets with his transition team. His head of human resources, Patricia Williams, has flown in from New York with a comprehensive action plan. "We're implementing the Crawford Standard immediately," Patricia announces to the assembled department heads. "Every employee receives 40 hours of unconscious bias training. Anyone who refuses or fails the certification is terminated." Maria, still adjusting to her new role as interim GM, raises her hand. "What about the guests who witnessed the incident? They're posting on social media." "Let them," James responds. "Transparency builds trust. We're not hiding from what happened. We're showing how we fix it." The story explodes across national media. CNN runs a segment titled, "From Humiliation to Ownership: How One Family's Dignity Cost a Manager Everything." The Today Show interviews James and Lisa about the experience. "I didn't buy this resort for revenge," James tells Matt Lauer. "I bought it to ensure no other family endures what we did." The hospitality industry takes notice. Marriott announces a review of their discrimination policies. Hilton implements mandatory bias training. The American Hotel and Lodging Association issues new guidelines for inclusive service. Richard, meanwhile, discovers the true cost of his prejudice. 3 hotel chains rescind job offers after background checks reveal the Emerald Bay incident. His LinkedIn profile attracts messages from diversity advocates condemning his actions. His wife, Susan, files for separation. "I can't be married to someone who terrorizes children," she tells him during their last conversation. James implements an anonymous reporting system for past discrimination incidents. The responses are overwhelming. Carmen, housekeeping supervisor. "Richard made me train only white staff for guest-facing roles. He said guests preferred traditional service." Kevin, maintenance. "I was told to use the service elevator when guests were present. He said my appearance was too urban for the main areas." Miguel, valet. "He assigned me to park cars only for guests who looked working class. The expensive cars went to white staff." Each testimony becomes part of a federal investigation. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission opens a formal case, with Richard as the primary target. Month 1. Industry transformation. Crawford Hospitality Group's stock price rises 34% following the Emerald Bay acquisition. Investors recognize that inclusive practices aren't just morally right, they're profitable. "Diversity isn't charity," James tells Forbes magazine. "It's a competitive advantage. Our inclusive properties outperform industry averages by 22%. Other resort owners take notice. Within 30 days, James receives acquisition inquiries for 12 underperforming properties with discrimination histories. The civil rights lawsuit against Richard personally seeks $2.3 million in damages. His assets include a modest house, a 10-year-old BMW, and a retirement account he can't afford to touch for legal fees. His lawyer, a court-appointed public defender, advises settlement. "Richard, you were recorded discriminating against children. No jury will sympathize." The settlement requires Richard to pay $150,000 in damages, forcing him to sell his house, complete 500 hours of community service at civil rights organizations, attend mandatory bias counseling for 2 years, accept a lifetime ban from hospitality industry management positions. Crawford Hospitality Group's transformation of Emerald Bay becomes a Harvard Business School case study. The resort's occupancy rate increases from 67% to 94% within 6 months. Guest satisfaction scores rise across all demographics. African American guests, 87% to 98%; Latino guests, 82% to 97%; Asian guests, 85% to 96%; white guests, 91% to 95%. Excellence isn't diminished by inclusion, James notes in the Harvard Business Review. It's enhanced by it. The economic benefits extend beyond the resort. Local minority-owned businesses receive $2.1 million in new contracts. The Community Scholarship Fund supports 47 students pursuing hospitality degrees. 6 months after his termination, Richard works as a night security guard at a strip mall in Riverside. His $180,000 salary has become $32,000. His company BMW has been replaced by a 12-year-old Honda Civic. He lives in a studio apartment, his marriage destroyed, his children estranged. The discrimination case follows him everywhere. A Google search of his name returns dozens of articles about his downfall. Former colleagues avoid him. The hospitality industry is small, and word travels fast about managers who create liability. The Emerald Bay case establishes new legal precedent for discrimination in hospitality. The Department of Justice cites it in subsequent cases, and federal judges reference James's testimony about systemic bias. Senator Elizabeth Warren invites James to testify before Congress about discrimination in the service industry. His recommendations become part of the Hospitality Equity Act, requiring federal contractors to implement bias training. The United Nations Human Rights Council recognizes Crawford Hospitality Group for advancing dignity and equality in the global hospitality sector. James received the award at a ceremony in Geneva, attended by diversity advocates from 47 countries. But Richard's public humiliation is far from over. The federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles draws protesters and media as Richard Steinberg's civil rights hearing begins. Outside, families hold signs reading, "Justice for the Crawford Kids," and "No More Hotel Hate." Inside courtroom 7A, Judge Maria Rodriguez, herself a Latina who understands discrimination, presides over the proceedings that will determine Richard's fate. James Crawford takes the witness stand first, his testimony measured and devastating. "Your Honor, when my 9-year-old daughter asked why the hotel manager was being mean to us, I had to explain that some people judge others by their skin color rather than their character. No parent should have that conversation in a hotel lobby." Richard's court-appointed attorney, David Kim, attempts damage control. "Your Honor, Mr. Steinberg made errors in judgment, but his intent was never discriminatory." "Objection," interrupts federal prosecutor Sarah Chen. "Intent is irrelevant when the impact is clear discrimination." The prosecution presents devastating evidence. The viral video showing Richard's treatment of the Crawford family, testimony from 17 other victims, and recorded statements from Emerald Bay employees describing Richard's pattern of bias. Carmen, the former housekeeping supervisor, testifies about Richard's unwritten rules. "He told me to assign minority staff to back-of-house positions only. He said guests expected to see appropriate faces in public areas." Kevin, the maintenance worker, describes being ordered to avoid guests. "Mr. Steinberg said my dreadlocks were unprofessional and made guests uncomfortable. I was told to work only when guests weren't around." Richard watches his career dissolve through witness after witness. His lawyer whispers urgent advice about accepting responsibility, but Richard's pride won't allow it. When called to testify, Richard attempts to justify his actions. "Your Honor, I was protecting the resort's reputation. We catered to a specific clientele with certain expectations." "What expectations?" Judge Rodriguez interrupts sharply. "Expectations of quality, standards. The Crawford family didn't. They weren't." "Weren't what, Mr. Steinberg?" Richard realizes he's trapped. Any honest answer will confirm his discrimination. Any lie will be perjury. "They didn't fit the demographic we typically serve," he admits finally. The courtroom erupts. Judge Rodriguez gavels for order. "Mr. Steinberg, you've just admitted to discriminating based on demographics, a clear violation of federal civil rights law." Richard's wife, Susan, attending to finalize their divorce proceedings, shakes her head in disgust. Their teenage children refuse to make eye contact with their father. The federal prosecutor presents her closing argument. "Your Honor, this case represents more than one man's prejudice. It represents a system that allowed discrimination to flourish unchecked. Mr. Steinberg's actions traumatized children, violated federal law, and perpetuate harmful stereotypes." Judge Rodriguez deliberates for 30 minutes before returning with her verdict. Mr. Steinberg, your actions constitute willful discrimination under the Civil Rights Act. You're hereby sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, suspended to 24 months probation, $75,000 in fines, 1,000 hours of community service at civil rights organizations, and lifetime prohibition from hospitality industry employment. Richard's legs give out. Court officers help him to a chair as the reality hits. His career is over, his family is gone, and his reputation is destroyed beyond repair. Outside the courthouse, James Crawford addresses the media. This case was never about revenge. It was about accountability. Today, families everywhere can feel safer knowing that discrimination has consequences. The changes at Emerald Bay will reshape the entire industry. The Emerald Bay transformation sends shockwaves through the global hospitality industry. Within 6 months, the Crawford Standard became the gold standard for inclusive luxury service. The American Hotel and Lodging Association announces mandatory implementation of bias training across all member properties. CEO Sarah Wilson states, "The Crawford case proves that discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's economically devastating." Marriott International launches Dignity for All, a $50 million initiative requiring bias training for all 140,000 employees worldwide. Their stock price rises 12% following the announcement as investors recognize the business value of inclusion. Hilton creates the Inclusive Excellence Program, partnering with historically black colleges to recruit diverse management talent. Their CEO, Christopher Nassetta, credits James Crawford's example. Excellence without inclusion is incomplete excellence. The Ritz-Carlton implements mystery shopper programs specifically testing for discriminatory treatment. Properties failing these audits face immediate management changes and comprehensive retraining. International hotel chains follow suit. Accor Hotels introduces bias training across their 5,000 properties in 110 countries. Intercontinental Hotels Group establishes a Global Inclusion Council with James Crawford as advisory chair. Hospitality schools nationwide revise their curricula. Cornell's School of Hotel Administration adds Dignity in Service as a mandatory course. Johnson & Wales University creates the Crawford Fellowship for minority students pursuing hospitality careers. The economic impact is measurable and immediate. Properties implementing inclusive practices see occupancy rates increase an average of 18%. Customer satisfaction scores rise across all demographic groups. Employee retention improves by 31% industry-wide. State governments take notice. California passes the Hospitality Equity Act, requiring bias training for all hotel management licenses. New York follows with similar legislation. 15 states introduce bills modeled on California's law. The Federal Trade Commission establishes new guidelines for hospitality advertising, requiring companies to demonstrate commitment to inclusive service. Properties with discrimination histories face enhanced scrutiny and potential investigation. Corporate America extends the lessons beyond hospitality. Major retailers implement Crawford-inspired training programs. Airlines revise passenger service protocols. Even luxury car dealerships adopt bias awareness training after several high-profile discrimination cases. The Emerald Bay case becomes required reading in business schools worldwide. Harvard Business School's case study, From Humiliation to Transformation, the Crawford Method, was downloaded over 100,000 times in its first year. Law schools cite the federal ruling in civil rights courses. The precedent established in Crawford v. Steinberg strengthens protection for families facing discrimination in public accommodations. Civil rights organizations credit the case with advancing their cause by decades. The NAACP's annual report highlights the Crawford transformation as proof that economic power can drive social justice. Research institutes document the change. MIT's Sloan School of Management publishes the inclusion dividend, showing that bias training increases profitability across service industries by an average of 23%. 2 years later, discrimination complaints in the hospitality industry have dropped 67% nationwide. Anonymous reporting systems reveal and address bias before it becomes a public scandal. The transformation extends internationally. European hotel chains adopt Crawford standards. Asian hospitality companies send executives to study the Emerald Bay model. But the most meaningful change is personal. Families of all backgrounds now vacation without fear of humiliation. 2 years later, the Crawford family returns to Emerald Bay. 2 years and 3 months after that terrible afternoon in the marble lobby, the Crawford family returns to Emerald Bay Resort for their 17th wedding anniversary. The Tesla pulls up to the same valet station, but everything else has changed. Maria Gonzalez, now the permanent general manager, greets them personally at the entrance. Her transformation from nervous receptionist to confident leader mirrors the resort's own evolution. Behind her stands a staff that reflects the community they serve. Diverse faces, different accents, unified by a commitment to making every guest feel valued. "Welcome home, Crawford family," Maria says, and the word home carries weight it never had before. The presidential suite has been renamed the Dignity Suite, with a plaque reading, "In honor of all families who refuse to accept less than respect." The room overlooks the same Pacific Ocean, but the view feels different now, hopeful rather than painful. Michael, now 14, understands the significance of their return in ways his 12-year-old self couldn't. "Dad, do you think Mr. Steinberg learned anything?" James considers the question carefully. Richard Steinberg completed his community service at the Los Angeles Urban League, working with underprivileged youth. Reports suggest genuine transformation, though trust must be earned through sustained action. "I hope so, son. But more importantly, we've learned that change is possible when good people refuse to stay silent." 11-year-old Sophia explores the resort with wonder, oblivious to the trauma this place once represented. She befriends children from a Mexican-American family, a Korean family, and an Ethiopian family, all staying in suites, all treated with identical respect. Lisa watches their daughter play and realizes this is what victory looks like. A new generation growing up in a world where their dignity isn't negotiable. At dinner, the family sits on the oceanfront terrace surrounded by guests of every background. The ambient sound is laughter and conversation in multiple languages, the true music of hospitality. Carmen, now director of guest relations, stops by their table. "Mr. Crawford, I want to thank you again. My daughter just graduated from UCLA with a hospitality degree. She says she wants to manage hotels like her mom." This is the legacy James treasures most. Not the business success or legal precedent, but the young people who see hospitality as a profession of dignity rather than discrimination. Kevin, the former maintenance worker, now serves as assistant general manager. His journey from service elevator exile to executive leadership demonstrates the resort's transformation. That evening, James stands on the balcony overlooking the lobby where his family was humiliated. The space now displays artwork from local artists of all backgrounds. Children run freely while parents relax without fear of judgment. His phone buzzes with a message from his CFO. Emerald Bay posted record profits this quarter, occupancy at 97%, guest satisfaction highest in company history. James deletes the message without reading it twice. The numbers matter, but they're not why he's here. Lisa joins him on the balcony. "Any regrets? About buying the resort? None. About the humiliation we endured?" James watches their children playing in the lobby below, their laughter echoing off marble walls that once witnessed their tears. If our pain prevented other families from experiencing the same thing, then it had purpose. The next morning, they check out with the same ease any guest enjoys. Maria hands Sophia a small gift, a photo of the resort staff with a note. "Thank you for helping us become better." As they drive away, Michael asks, "Will we come back next year?" "If you want to," James replies. "I do, but not because you own it, because it feels like a place that wants us here." And that, James realizes, is how you know the transformation is complete. In a just world, respect is the only currency that matters. The Crawford family's journey from humiliation to transformation proves that one moment of courage can reshape entire industries. What began as a family vacation ruined by prejudice became a catalyst for change that protected countless others from experiencing the same pain. James Crawford didn't just buy a resort. He bought the opportunity to rewrite the rules of hospitality. His investment of $72 million returned far more than profit. It returned dignity to an industry that had forgotten its fundamental purpose, making everyone feel welcome. The lesson extends beyond luxury hotels. Every day, in restaurants, retail stores, and service businesses across America, families face the choice between accepting discrimination or demanding better. The Crawford case proves that demanding better works. Richard Steinberg's fall from power demonstrates that prejudice carries a price, not just for victims, but for perpetrators. His 20-year career evaporated in 20 minutes because he couldn't see past the color of a family's skin. His story serves as a warning to anyone who believes their position protects them from consequences. But this story isn't really about Richard's downfall. It's about Maria's rise from receptionist to general manager. It's about Carmen watching her daughter graduate with a hospitality degree. It's about Kevin moving from service elevator exile to executive leadership. Most importantly, it's about Michael and Sophia Crawford growing up in a world where their dignity isn't negotiable, where they'll never have to explain to their own children why hotel managers treat them differently. The transformation at Emerald Bay sparked changes across the hospitality industry. Bias training became standard. Inclusive hiring became competitive advantage. Anonymous reporting systems gave employees power to prevent discrimination before it escalates. Today, families of all backgrounds can book luxury accommodations without fear of humiliation. The Crawford standard has become the gold standard because James refused to accept that his children should expect less than respect. Your response to discrimination matters too. When you witness bias in restaurants, hotels, or any service business, you have choices. You can stay silent and enable it to continue. Or you can speak up and demand better. Support businesses that embrace inclusion. Leave reviews that highlight respectful treatment. Share stories of companies that get it right. Economic pressure creates change faster than legislation ever could. The Crawford family story reminds us that justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoing. It's about creating systems that prevent future harm. Every dollar spent at inclusive businesses is a vote for the kind of world we want our children to inherit. Change begins with refusing to accept unacceptable treatment. It continues with supporting leaders who create inclusive environments. It's completed when the next generation can't imagine a world where respect depends on appearance. Remember, in a just world, respect is the only currency that matters. Spend yours wisely. Has this story changed how you view discrimination in hospitality? Share with someone who needs to see this.